Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran. Today we'll be doing a balanced Druid run. This is one of the specs that I haven't yet covered in Torghast. So we'll be going through the Shadowlands alpha version of Torghast. Druid's got a couple new abilities which don't really work for one spec or another. They're kind of like overall good for all the specs. But yeah, we'll be taking a look at Druids to see how they play. Balanced Druids in particular is a spec that I've recently done a dungeon for, but I don't really know how I feel about boomkins. So hopefully by the end of this video I'll be able to formulate my words together. But I feel like boomies are looking kind of rougher than I remember them on the alpha, but maybe that's just me. Today we have the Kieran ability, so we'll be able to, normally it's an ability, where do I find this actually? Is it basic here? It's right here. Kindred Spirits. Try to see if we can find in my spellbook. Form a bond with an ally every 1 minute. You can empower the bond for 10 seconds, granting you the effects based on your partner's role, granting them effect based on your role. So you give and take an effect depending on the other person's role, but you can also Kindred Spirits yourself. So with Empower Bond for DPS for 10 seconds, all abilities you use, it will energize you, giving you primary stats. So for every 50 damage you deal, the damage could stack up quite quickly, but it's only 10 seconds. It's also on the GCD, and using Incarn and this ability and all that together is just super unfortunate. Boomies have been a little bit rough, so I'm going to be playing Incarnation for the burst damage because I think I'm going to need it. Force of Nature for tankiness, renewal, restoration, affinity for maybe some healing here and there. I think Mass Entanglement is a decent option because I can like entangle things and dot them up and run away. Twin Moons, Shooting Stars. We'll also play some like Stellar Rift, New Moon, Soul of the Forest, but this seems to be the strongest build right now that I can come up with because boomies feel a little awkward. We're also not going to start at a high level. I tried to start where I start with all my other classes because I was doing this for about 40 minutes already with Boomy. I had a run where I started, I think, level 13. Thinking that, you know what, level 13 isn't a big level, because it really isn't. Yeah, I'm gonna be fine, it's gonna be all right. And it just didn't really work out all that well. So I guess the problem is that I tried to start at a high enough level where I might be able to get a bit of a challenge, but not to the point where it's impossible for me to overcome. And I've done this for all the other specs, even those that I haven't been comfortable playing with. I tried it on the Boomkin and it was a slaughter. I got obliterated left and right. So I'm going to start on a much lower level. First row here, when Moonfire, Rake, Rip, or Rejuvenation are on a single target, their effects increase by 100%. That could actually be pretty good for pulling single bosses. So maybe I'll take it. That's a new one. So let's do with some of the new abilities and test them out for ourselves. Also, when you use abilities, they will pop up here on the window to the right instead of taking up this whole screen here with campaigns. That's really nice. We're going to skip to floor 7. Just so we can have more anim abilities and some modicum of challenge, but this is a much lower level that I have to do for Boomkin because it is not quite as durable as some of the other classes I've done on Torghast. But yeah, the Druid run that I did I was actually kind of disappointed with how poorly Boomkin did. I think the problem with it might be the eclipses. And I know that Blizzard originally added eclipses and they were a really cool idea and I like them. And trust me, I still like the idea behind Eclipse. I just don't know how I feel about it in the current setup. Just because I feel like eclipses are limiting. Maybe I should have been doing Starfall this whole time. Maybe what I should do is go for Stellar Drift so I can Starfall and move and run away from things. That would actually maybe be the go-to in these. So I might consider it. Because I mean, if Starfall does good damage, and it can reduce its cost by a hair, then why not, right? Only be running around, instant casting. What are you gonna do about it? Chase after me? Yeah, I always will have a 45-yard range on my enemies, so that'll be something that will be an advantage for me. What do we get? Clear casting and gore trigger 100% more often, and eclipses take 2 fewer spells to trigger. That's a new ability that has been added. And you have all of the affinity bonuses and their effects are increased by 100%. I have all the affinity bonuses and effects increased. Could I make a better feral build with this? Let's go with clear casting. And eclipses take 2 fewer spells. So now we can kind of just use 1 spell and dive into eclipses faster. And maybe that'll feel a little bit better. Because eclipses One thing I would say about Balance Druid, it feels like, and I could be wrong on this one, but it certainly feels like the eclipses don't really have nearly as big of a payoff as I would want them to. That's the biggest issue for me, is it feels like it takes you a second to get into an eclipse. An eclipse is a limiting, right? Right now all I can really do is spam Starfire. And then into the other eclipse I can only spam Solar Wrath. With Solar Wrath and Nature Eclipse, you do better single target damage. With the other one, you do better AoE damage. But what if a situation goes in where it turns from single target to AoE? Well, then you kind of screwed in a sense. What if you are rolling into a fight? Because you're kind of forced to play into an eclipse, right? Like, the game wants for you to go into a lunar eclipse and then into solar. It's not like you can really force yourself to go from lunar into a lunar if it's like a pure AoE situation. The game wants you to go with the flow of into lunar, into solar, into lunar, into solar. So sometimes you'll be in a nature eclipse and you are trying to do AoE damage, but you can't. Every time, let's do the moonfire and full moon, because that could be a really good combo together. I'll take a full moon. But yeah, you kind of go from lunar to solar, and what if you are in eclipse and the game naturally takes you into nature, you really want to cleave in AoE, so wouldn't the eclipse shouldn't be strong, right? Shouldn't the payoff, once you get back into the arcane eclipse, into the AoE eclipse, shouldn't that eclipse be definitely worth the wait, the time that you spend, waiting for it? I think it should be, but right now I would argue that it's not worth. Like, all that time, all that wait that you had just to get into eclipse was definitely not worth it. So, I don't know. I do know that I need to kite this guy around so you don't get any debuffs. What I'm saying is Blizzard needs to do a little bit, I think, better balance of the eclipses. They need to be far stronger than where they're at right now. I feel like right now, currently, they're just not worth it. Like, it just doesn't feel nearly as good to dive into Eclipse. It's like, oh man, now I'm in this Eclipse, and I gotta deal with this mechanic, then I'm in the other Eclipse, and I gotta deal with the other mechanic. Another thing that changed on Torghast is Oppressive Aura now scales. It doesn't start hitting you with like that, what, 15-20% slow immediately. The closer you get to that enemy, the more that slow applies. So the further you are, let's say like if the enemy is in a far side of the hallway, it doesn't slow you off the bat, but when you're getting closer to them, then it really starts to tick up a little slower and slower and slower. Here he is. So as I'm getting closer to him, I actually should be slowed down even more. Yeah, it goes from 5 to now 15. Oh, and there's a lot of them here now. So there's 3 where I'm actually completely slowed. I can't go anywhere. Very unfortunate. Nice. And we have automatically cast spell when you shapeshift. In Moonkin form, you Starfall. Wait. Cat form, you Frenzy. Bear form, you Frenzy, Stampede Roar. Bark Skin, no form. I think we have to go Moonkin form, where we Starfall all the time. So we're gonna out of here with Bark Skin, in here with Starfall. Yeah, no, we have to go for a build now. Where's my little assistant here? Can you help me out here, friend? I need to change my talents to Stellar Drift. Increases Starfall's duration by 2 seconds. Damage by 25. Allows you to move while it's active. Can we buff it even further? Maybe Eclipse. That's reduced and duration increased. It doesn't play with eclipses anymore. We could. I think we're gonna go still shooting stars, and everything else I think is gonna be fine. So we can go cat form and run. Bear form for a frenzied regen. No forms for Bark Skin. And yeah, Stellar Drift or Starfall. We can kind of do this. Bark Skin. Back into bear form or back into boomy form. Bark Skin. Boomy form. Wow, this seems a little busted. And I can cast while moving actually, yeah, so we can just do this forever. Wow, that's a little bit of a weird playstyle, but I guess it works. We can kind of just power shift back and forth between Bear and Boomkin and get yourself a massive amounts of just ridiculous amounts of Starfall damage. And that whole time while Starfall is falling, you can actually just cast spells and do stuff. Another thing that I noticed is kind of doable is power shift out of here. Use the Covenant ability to gain a bunch of stats very, very quickly. Especially useful in AoE since you hit multiple enemies, because every 50 damage you do, it gives you stats. So you kind of just power shift back and forth between Bear to activate a heal, which in between the bears can also give you a bark skin, but also the bear heal can give you iron bark. That's a lot of heals all at once, and we can go for extra health just because I think survivability is potentially going to be an issue. That was a lot of AoE damage. I mean, I guess this build kind of works, right? Moonfire and Rake on at least 3 or more targets. Your damage and healing is increased. Oh, let's actually go for that. Yeah. So when Moonfire is on one enemy, that one enemy is going to take a lot of damage. But if Moonfire is on multiple enemies, which we can put 3 on 3 enemies easily, all my abilities do more damage. So hopefully that'll help me get more AoE damage going out. But we are finally starting to have fun with our Boomkin. Prior to this, we were kind of struggling, not gonna lie, but now we're starting to have a little bit of fun. So that's kind of cool. Like Kara's Bargain actually ends up working out pretty well from a fight. Damage and healing is increased by 50%, but every time you deal damage or healing, your movement speed is reduced. With how much a power shift, I mean, I'm probably gonna get moments where I'm actually just stuck in place, so maybe using Typhoon and Roots are gonna be a lot more important as an ability. But with how often I power shift, I mean, it just seems like a value proposition. Oh my god. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to clear the debuffs from that enemy. There's no way I was gonna escape him. But that was awesome. Just came in and obliterated everything. It was so cool. Wait, is this the same layout as when I first started? No way! It is! Monstrous Guarding is here and everything. Oh, is this like a payback that I get to do? Is this the same exact floor that I had prior? Yo, because I struggled a lot on this floor. It is a little different. There are slightly different enemies here this time, but it's mostly the same. Oh, this is payback, isn't it? Payback for the first time I had to play Boomy, and I suffered. Yeah, Boomkin is definitely one of the classes that's a little bit on the weaker side. I guess the best way I could put Boomy together is this is fun, being able to play Torghast, because Boomy, while not amazingly good, I just made a build that kind of sort of works. It's really outside the box, and I think that's the enjoyable part of the whole Torghast experience. However, Boomy, I feel like, is a little bit too limiting as a spec. Yeah, these traps are a little different, and the enemies are slightly different, but it's the same layout as the one that I was struggling with last time. So that's enjoyable to be able to come back here and just to crush it like it's nothing. So overall, I would have to say I had a lot of fun playing Balanced Druid in the Tower of Torghast. I like a lot of the Covenant abilities you get to play with in terms of how they alter your abilities, and the Covenant ability together with the Starfall build actually worked really well in pure group situations. But it's kind of cool because it feels like in Torghast, Blizzard wants for you to be a hybrid class. Maybe whether you want to be a hybrid between a healer and a feral, or a bear and a boomkin. In this particular setup, swapping between bear and boomkin form was kind of the play for me. And it was actually super enjoyable. However, I feel there are some things I like about Balanced Druids and some things I don't. I can talk for hours right now about the rigidity of the whole solar and lunar eclipses. While I was someone who was actually very happy about eclipses returning, I expected for eclipses to be far stronger, since it's a playstyle that kind of forces you to be in one eclipse or another. Whereas lunar eclipse is the best for AoE and cleave, the solar eclipse is the best for single target, and sometimes when you dip from one eclipse into the other, the game naturally wants for you to go from solar to lunar or from lunar to solar, all you get to choose is which eclipse you start in, which means that you kind of have to plan ahead for fights in raids and dungeons in terms of which eclipse you want to be in first. Let's say ads come in for the second portion of a boss fight or something, you'll want to make sure to be popping into lunar eclipse when that happens. And with this rigidity that it creates, sometimes in dungeons you'll be in a solar eclipse and it's an AoE fight where you are in the wrong eclipse completely, and other times it'll be some sort of a single target big damage priority setup and you're in the lunar eclipse cleaving things, and that's just not ideal. It kind of takes away a little bit of this flow from the player himself, and with the current BFA setup, just using Star Surge give you empowerments for both nature and lunar abilities, and you get to choose which one you want to prioritize in the moment, which I think is just a little bit easier to manage with. So if eclipses are going to continue being rigid, which can create a fun gameplay loop, I do think they need to be maybe at least stronger. There are a couple other things I also want to mention in terms of Starfall and some of the mechanics and Star Surge and how both of those abilities are actually buffed while in eclipses, but sometimes you'll want to use them outside of eclipses, and some of the things that Blizzard could fix, but I'll probably do that in a separate video. I'd want to kind of combine a video for Feral Druids and Balanced Druids and talk a little bit about them, what some of the things I like, what are some of the things that don't. I recently decided to take a look at Druid because Blizzard started updating other classes like Shamans, Elemental Enhancement, as well as Warlocks, Affliction, Destruction, Demonology. All those specs and classes have gotten updates and they actually feel really good. Now, the damage isn't properly scaled, but the playstyles do feel good. And Boomkins right now, the playstyle just doesn't feel all that great, but it could be honestly just linked to the damage. But the rigidity is definitely something worth noting here. While I had fun in Torghast, it's definitely a spec that I will need to make a separate video on. But just letting you guys know my thoughts at the end, because I felt when I originally recorded this, it was a lot ramblier than how it came out here. Thank you guys so much for checking out this video. Let me know your thoughts about Balanced Druids in the Tower of Torghast. Either way, how you slice the Balanced Druid, I had a lot of fun with it. Thank you guys all. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see all of you in another video.